You have heard a hedgehog, or you think you have, the snuffling near the hedge, the rustling in the leaf pile, the occasional sharp hiss when you got too close. But you have never heard a hedgehog, not really, because the sounds a hedgehog produces in your presence, every single sound it makes when it knows or suspects you are there, are a filtered, suppressed, minimal version of its actual acoustic life. The real acoustic life of a hedgehog only happens in one condition: complete solitude. And what researchers discovered when they placed sensitive audio recording equipment in gardens and reviewed hours of footage of hedgehogs that believed themselves entirely unobserved, was something that forced a fundamental revision of how this animal had been classified for decades. The hedgehog is not a quiet animal. It is an animal that goes quiet when you are there. What it sounds like when you are not there is what this video is about. For most of scientific history, hedgehogs were described as largely silent animals. The classification made sense from the available evidence. Observers in the field reported minimal vocalization. Animals in captivity produced alarm sounds, hissing, huffing, and little else. The academic literature on hedgehog acoustics was sparse. The species was assumed to communicate primarily through scent rather than sound. This assumption was built on a fundamental methodological error. Every observation that established the hedgehog as silent was made by a human observer whose presence was known to the animal. The hedgehog that a researcher is watching is not behaving normally. It has detected the researcher through scent, through ground vibration, through the changed acoustic environment of human presence, and has modified its behavior accordingly. The vocal suppression a hedgehog enacts in the presence of perceived threats is not partial. It is near total. The continuous self-directed vocalization that characterizes solitary foraging behavior stops. The exploratory clicking stops. The low-frequency social monitoring sounds stop. What remains are the unavoidable mechanical sounds of movement and breathing, and the alarm vocalizations that serve a defensive function. Everything else goes silent. When researchers placed remotely monitored audio equipment in gardens, equipment with no human presence, and reviewed the recordings, the picture changed completely. The hedgehog had been vocal all along. The observers just happened to be the thing that silenced it. The most consistent and most surprising finding from remote audio monitoring of hedgehogs is the continuous low-frequency vocalization produced during solitary foraging. Researchers call it self-directed vocalization. It is not communication in the conventional sense. It is not directed at another animal. It is not a signal with a receiver. It is the hedgehog processing its environment through sound as well as scent. The specific character of this vocalization is difficult to describe without audio, but consistent observers describe it as a continuous, soft, snuffling clicking pattern, rhythmic, variable in its detail, responsive to what the hedgehog is investigating at any given moment. When the hedgehog approaches a novel object, the pattern changes. The rhythm quickens. A clicking component becomes more pronounced. The animal appears to be using the sound production as part of its sensory engagement with unfamiliar material. When the hedgehog is moving between investigation points on familiar ground, the vocalization settles into a lower, steadier rhythm, almost like a continuous murmur. When it locks onto prey, the vocalization stops momentarily. Complete silence in the moment of maximum sensory focus, then resumes after the strike. The vocalization is not background noise. It is active sensory behavior. The hedgehog is, in the most accurate available description, thinking out loud in a language that has no human equivalent and that you have never heard, because every time you have been in the position to hear it, the hedgehog knew you were there. Before we continue, something worth considering. Have you ever been in your garden at night, completely still, for long enough that a hedgehog stopped registering your presence? Did you notice any sounds change? Any vocalization begin that you could not identify? Write in the comments what you heard, or what you wish you had listened for. Here is where the story becomes more complex. The self-directed vocalization described above falls within human hearing range. It is audible, in principle, to a human standing in the garden. The reason most people have never heard it is not biological limitation. It is proximity and attention. Most people who encounter hedgehogs do so briefly, with movement, with the various ambient noises of human presence masking the hedgehog's soft, continuous sound. The hedgehog also detects the human and stops. But hedgehog acoustic behavior does not stop at the frequencies humans can hear. The animal produces and detects sounds extending into the ultrasonic range, above 20,000 hertz, beyond the ceiling of human perception. The specific function of these ultrasonic components in hedgehog behavior is not fully established. Some research has detected ultrasonic elements in the Twitter calls of hoglets. Some studies have found ultrasonic components in adult-to-adult interactions. Others have produced inconclusive results. What is established is that the acoustic world a hedgehog inhabits extends into registers that humans cannot access directly. The sounds you have never heard include sounds that, even with complete solitude and perfect attention, you physically cannot hear. The hedgehog's private acoustic life is not just socially unavailable. Part of it is biologically unavailable. The evidence for hedgehog private vocalization does not come from a single study. It comes from the accumulation of remote audio monitoring data from multiple research groups across Britain and continental Europe, collected across decades of increasingly sensitive recording technology. The pattern is consistent. Animals monitored without human presence show significantly higher acoustic activity than animals observed directly. The self-directed vocalization is present in every individual monitored across extended solitary foraging periods. The suppression of vocalization on detection of human presence is immediate and near total. The research also documented something specific about the vocalization's relationship to behavior. The hedgehog's self-directed sound changes character depending on what it is doing. Different investigation behaviors produce different acoustic signatures. The clicking during novel object investigation is acoustically distinct from the steady murmur of familiar ground transit. The vocalization during hunting differs from the vocalization during scent mark reading. The sounds are not random. They are structured, responsive, variable in ways that correlate with specific behavioral states. They are, in the most cautious and accurate scientific language available, a form of acoustic self-expression in a species we classified as silent for most of the history of its study. The huff is the hedgehog sound most people have heard, the rapid, mechanical, escalating exhalation that signals confrontation between males or a female's resistance to courtship. It is loud enough to hear through a garden hedge, distinctive enough to stop a person walking past. But the huff also occurs in solitude, and in solitude, it is different. Remote monitoring has documented solitary huffing in hedgehogs encountering specific stimuli, a particularly strong or unfamiliar scent, a sudden unexpected sound, a novel object that triggers the highest level of novel stimulus processing. In these cases, the huff is produced without another animal present, without a social context, without a clear communicative function in the conventional sense. Researchers have interpreted this as a self-directed alarm response, the animal producing the confrontation sound in response to a stimulus that its sensory system has flagged as potentially threatening, even when no threat is physically present. It functions like a startle vocalization. The hedgehog that huffs alone in a garden at midnight is not communicating with another animal. It is responding to its own sensory experience with the most intense available acoustic output. The huff you heard through your fence on a quiet night may have had no audience, no other hedgehog, no confrontation, no social function, just a small animal responding to something in the dark with the only loud voice it has. The hedgehog song, the sustained, complex, tonal vocalization produced by males during breeding season, has been documented in previous research in this series, but the song raises a question that the available research has not fully answered. Does the male produce the song only when a female is present, or does it also sing alone? The evidence here is genuinely uncertain. Some remote monitoring sessions have captured what appears to be male song in contexts where no female was detected nearby. Others have found song only in the presence of a female's scent or in the period of active courtship pursuit. The sample sizes in existing research are small. The definitiveness of the conclusion is limited. What can be said honestly is this. The relationship between hedgehog song and social context is not as simple as stimulus response. The animal's vocal behavior is responsive to internal states as well as external social cues. Whether the male hedgehog sings in full solitude, to itself, to the dark, for reasons that have no social function, is a question the research has not closed. And in that open question sits something that is genuinely difficult to categorize. The possibility of vocalization with no audience, sound produced for its own sake, in an animal we once described as silent. Here is something worth sitting with. If a hedgehog produces sounds in your garden that you have never heard, sounds that stop the moment it detects your presence, what do you think it would feel like to hear the real acoustic life of the animal that lives in your space? Write your answer in the comments. The finding that hedgehogs maintain a continuous private vocal life suppressed in human presence, revealed only in genuine solitude, raises a question that goes beyond hedgehog biology. How many other animals have we classified incorrectly because the act of observation changed the behavior we were measuring? This is not a hypothetical problem. The observer effect, the alteration of behavior by the presence of an observer, is documented across animal behavior research. Animals of many species modify their behavior when they detect human presence. The behaviors observed in the field are, to some degree, performances adapted to the perceived audience. Remote monitoring technology has begun to reveal the gap between observed and unobserved behavior across multiple species. Camera traps, remote audio recording, GPS tracking with no human field presence. In each case, behaviors appear that were not documented by direct observation. The hedgehog's private vocal life is one example. How many other private behaviors, acoustic, social, exploratory, are running in your garden right now, suppressed only when you are present to see them? The answer is probably more than we have measured, and the instruments to measure them have only recently become available. There is a practical implication of everything above. If you want to hear the real acoustic life of a hedgehog, human presence is the obstacle, not the time of night, not the season, not the hedgehog's willingness to vocalize. You, your scent, your ground vibration, your body heat, your movement. The hedgehog knows when you are there, far before you are close enough to hear anything. By the time you are in a position to listen, the suppression has already happened. The solution used by researchers, remote audio recording with no human presence, is accessible in a consumer form. Wildlife audio recorders are available. A microphone placed near a known hedgehog route with the human absent will capture acoustic behavior that no direct observation ever has. People who have done this describe the recordings with consistent surprise. The continuous soft vocalization they did not know was there. The clicking during object investigation. The change in acoustic character at the moment of prey detection. And sometimes, rarely, in the right season, at the right hour, something that sounds, in the most careful available description, like a song, produced in solitude, heard only by a machine left in the dark. The hedgehog you have been watching is not the hedgehog, the animal that crosses your lawn, that snuffles near your compost, that freezes and curls when you approach. That animal is the version of itself it performs when it knows it has an audience. The real hedgehog, the one with the continuous private voice, the self-directed acoustic processing, the exploration sounds, and the solitary huffs, and the possible songs in the dark, exists in the hours and spaces where you are not. And now you know it exists. That changes something about the quiet garden you think you share with this animal. It is not quiet. It never was. It was only ever quiet when you were there. If you placed an audio recorder in your garden tonight and listened to the recording in the morning, what do you think you would hear? Leave your answer in the comments. Every video on this channel is built on documented research, real behavior, real biology, no exaggeration. If that is what brought you here, you already know what to do.